Science, and I am the specialist of the strange. Tonight wasn't exactly what I had in mind for this episode, but it certainly is a worthy inclusion. There's been talks with a few different appearances I've been on lately about getting me to collaborate with Tony Rodrigues. His information is going to be in the description of the episode if you don't know who that is, as well as a very helpful online class that he has that helps deal with memory blocks and fragmented memories and things of that nature. Because I've been trying to figure out my own story. Tony is someone who's I kept being told to look into further and further, with hopes of potentially going into further collaborations down the line. I was more than open to it. I would love to hear his thoughts. He did do a little bit of research on me before we officially met, but didn't know any of my actual backstory in regards to the ET phenomenon, which in many ways purifies what he has to say. He went into this relatively blind, not knowing what to expect, so his thoughts on the matter could be as potentially uncorrupted as possible. When he mentioned that he wasn't familiar or he hadn't seen any of the interviews, like the one I did recently with Elena Danann, or the one that is dropping, tonight for me with Demis, Viana, links to those will also be in the description as well. Once he mentioned that he hadn't really seen those interviews with me, that he's usually too busy to watch all the videos people put out, I tried to hold back as much info as I had as possible to, once again, try to get as raw results as possible. So, here's the interaction. Check it out, and be sure to keep your eyes and ears open because it looks like further talks with Tony are in the future.
Every every time I go to talk about this type of stuff, something weird always happens. So
the first 4 years for me did that every time. Like even like professional, like really expensive film studios where I called in, they had a whole different system. They would have problems happen that never happened before. They're like, what is going on? It's like it followed me for a while, for about 4 years, and then it just kind of died. Like I reached a point where they weren't watching me anymore, or whoever was, whatever was going on.
Well, I was just gonna say, if my situation keeps panning out the way it looks, I don't think mine's probably gonna go away, because let's just say when I go to look out to the stars and ask if there's life out there, the answer I get back is, "Hi, Daddy, we miss you."
Interesting.
Yeah.
So we're going to work on a timeline for you then today.
Okay.
So let me ask you this: so you have things that you remember that don't make sense, fragmented memories, or do you have kind of like a whole story?
There's a few things that I have been able to start slowly piecing together. Say, just as an example, when I was about 4 or 5 years old, there was one night where I somehow managed to disappear from my mother's house and end up about 30 miles away at my grandparents'. Now, most people assume, well, did your aunt just take it in your sleep? Highly unlikely, considering within a few minutes of my grandparents realizing I was in the house, my mom was calling them, freaking out, thinking that I got taken
from home.
Yeah.
Interesting. Do you have any memory of, I guess, right before that, the moments before that happened?
I do remember what looks like tall grays carrying me out. There was a point I was trying to scream for my mom to get her to realize something was happening, and one of them kept an eye on her to make sure she didn't get up, but it did, from what I remember, she was kind of stern, like she could tell something was happening.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Oh, okay. So what year were you born?
1996.
Well, this was recent. It's in my mind, 2000 is like a couple years ago. So we're talking 2000, 2001
Roughly.
in Idaho.
Yes.
So the other thing I'll say is that I write this stuff down to create a timeline and look for um, patterns that will emerge, but I don't share this information with anybody, just so
Okay.
you know. So it's fully confidential. Your recording is going to go wherever you do it. I am not recording.
Okay.
So when we do this, 96 born in Idaho. Whereabouts in Idaho were you born? And where did you live? I guess more directly, whereabouts in Idaho were you living when this happened?
I was living in Jerome, Idaho. My grandparents live in a small town called Murtaugh.
Bertall. Okay. So that happened, and 4 years old is a long, I mean, so I guess that what does that put you? You're like 27?
Yeah.
Still young. It's good to hear. Like it's weird. I feel bad saying that, like I'm being condescending, but no, I'm legitimately happy for you. You know what I mean? Being that's a great age. 28 was when I think I was in my had started having fun in life. So I want to say this. So after that, do you remember any kind of changes, personality changes, anything? Were you weren't in school yet? Yeah, we're talking preschool. And did you have any interest change or any kind of personality change?
From and I've had old babysitters kind of come up and after seeing some of the shows I've been on, and they start talking about things they remember me doing. They did notice that I did take up more of an interest in outer space.
Hmm.
And there was also a point where apparently I would say something along the lines of my wife in heaven comes visit me a lot.
So you already feel how to word this. So you already feel that you've been in kind of like in a program used for like a genetic program, like a breeding program.
And apparently there's a family history of it.
Oh, so that's the other thing. So mom, dad, uncle, grandpa, grandma in the military or reoccurring things.
My father, he did a brief stint with the National Guard, but he was dishonorably discharged. One of my uncles, he was Army, but he got injured during basic training when a hurricane brought a building down on him. So
Oh, wow.
nothing too exotic that I'm aware of.
So not like a dad in the CIA.
No.
And you said there's a family history. So was there somebody, is it mom, dad, or somebody else that has an abduction experience?
Apparently abductions run through my father's side. To what extent, I'm not sure. I've been kind of estranged from that side for some time because of things that happened. But my aunt would always try to say, we were part Anunnaki and that you could tell because we had weird devil horns in our head. It's like, all right, whatever. And
You know your blood type?
oh, negative.
Me too.
And she also did mention that one of my grandmothers, my father's mother, apparently had experiences where she was abducted and gave birth to hybrid grays and had continued abductions because there was a failure to thrive and they were needing mother's milk.
Okay. Anything else? So after 4 or 5 years old, like, have you had anything since then? What else? I mean, I guess let's start at the beginning and move from that instance forward. What was the next thing that happened?
I do have brief fragments kind of scattered throughout of very similar visits, for lack of a better word, taking place, but nothing that was an abduction, just contact.
So let me ask you this about that.
All
I'm,
right.
and don't let me cut you off if you still have
No.
more. Like, I'm still listening, and like, I
Mhm.
don't want to tell you what to think, or you know what I'm saying. It's
It's-
very important that you tell me what you're remembering.
mm.
Scattered. When you have those scattered, I guess call them fragmented memories of abduction, are they in your home or are they somewhere? Are they somewhere that you're not familiar with?
They usually start off in my home. But these last few years, I've been able to recall more and more detail, which, granted, brings up a lot more questions and answers. But say the next major incident that took place, I was about 12 years old, and I made an attempt on my own life. I remember seeing this blue veil pop out of nowhere. The way the light kind of moved around me looked like I was underwater. Suddenly, then there's this man that appears in front of me. I couldn't really make out a lot of detail about his image. It looked kind of blurry. He had kind of longish hair, kind of a silvery white robe from the looks of it on. He just simply approached me, says, "Dakota, there's someone here to see you." He steps aside, and all of a sudden, there's this little girl who looks like maybe 4, 5, 6 years old. First thing I notice is that she looks just like me. She runs up to me, tears just pouring down her face, and she's just crying, "Daddy, please don't do it."
Listen, oh wait. So in 2021, 2020 to 2021, which is very recent, have you had any changes in your life? Any major changes?
My father did deploy it to Iraq about that time frame.
In the National Guard?
Yeah,
But I mean, personally, like any habit changes or any kind of personality things? Like, did you quit one thing and pick up another thing? Or I guess just any habitual changes?
uh, mainly just a continuation of interest in space that seemed to pop up out of nowhere.
Right around that, right around those years, 2020.
Yeah, back in 2001.
Oh, in 2001 that happened.
Yeah.
I'm looking at
Oh,
2020 to 2021, like in that area.
oh,
Did you have anything personally happen where you had any kind of life changes?
I was with this group that was trying to quote unquote legitimize paranormal research, ghosts, UFOs, all that. We got into a particular topic involving the Hat Man. I spouted off a theory about what I thought it could be or where it came from. All of a sudden, we all started getting attacked. And there's actually video I managed to save of this, where the first instance we knew something was up. People would keep seeing like shadows running around us. One guy texted me, he was out of the UK. He said, "I don't want to freak out anybody, but my neck is burning and I'm coughing up blood." But then just one by one, people started to have to drop off because something was affecting them afterwards. One gentleman who honestly looked like he was getting possessed, for lack of a better word, his cancer ended up coming back. One woman, she had to seek out mental health help for a bit. And another who was down in Texas had something who matched the Hat Man's description keep an eye on her.
I never heard of them. Yeah, look. So that's TikTok's new favorite horror villain.
Mm-hmm.
Oh wow, no kidding.
Yeah, the number of people are purposely overdosing on Benadryl just to try to see this thing.
Wow. So when they see it, do they see smoke behind it?
Some people do. It seems to change his appearance between certain individuals. There's also some people who claim that he doesn't work alone.
What was your when you said that you were with that group and you fielded kind of what your opinion of what it was? What did you suspect it was?
I look towards Brenton mythology, which someone pointed out they basically their version of the Grim Reaper, called the Anku, often appeared in a very similar, had a very similar appearance, a wide brim hat, some sort of long cloak, and that one of the versions of the myth was that the Anku was Cain from the Bible. And something about that seemed to piss it off.
Like the original Cain,
Yeah,
the Cain and Abel.
yeah.
And that made it so help me out here. How did that play out? Like
I don't know, just we caught wind of a young lady who thought she was being stalked by this thing. She actually caught photo of it standing behind her, and I believe it was a younger sister. And as well as they would go visit, the graveyard, just to visit a family member who passed, and all of a sudden you see what looks like a little troll thing kind of turning its back on them like it's trying to spy on them, be nonchalant. Roughly around the time this thing showed up, apparently she miscarried, which is another common thing in a lot of reports I've come across.
wow. Okay. And so in 2020 and 21, did you have any kind of vision or any kind of contact with that?
I'd have.
But I mean,
So,
was it in that time frame?
it what I started having increased reports of this thing right around the time the pandemic really started to set in, which is to be expected, being that this thing said to appear to people whenever they're at a low point in their life. Say there was one gentleman who his family was getting so scared about things that were happening, they were trying to move across country to run away from it. Showing me the plane tickets and everything.
Wow.
There was this room in their house that his wife would call the dead room because just walking in there, you would feel like something was just sucking the energy out of you. He was going through the house, telling me everything that was been going on. All of a sudden, out of the background, when it was supposed to be just him, a cat, and a dog in the house, you hear what sounds like a 6-year-old child say, "Put down the fucking phone or I'll kill you, bitch."
Wow.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Further
Yeah,
into
this is a whole different facet.
further into the conversation, he tells me that he's been dealing with this being for quite some time, that there were times where it was trying to act, kind of friendly towards him. So I was like, all right, being that he's trying to be friendly, did he give you a name? Try to establish trust. He said, yeah, it was something like Cain. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's kind of when I was looking for in that time frame. So it's kind of not what it. Okay, so in that time, do you married your kids?
No.
You're single at that time, so any kind of contact with that wouldn't have affected, like, like a miscarriage or on your end personally.
The only miscarriage that took place late 2021, if I remember correctly, was my younger sister.
Does she have any kind of memories of back in 2001, 2000? I guess she wasn't, she might not even been born yet. Does she have any memories of the early 2000s of with strange things like what you went through?
No, that actually was, like you said, she wasn't born when my first incident took place. So that was kind of my marker to try to figure out a time frame.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I know it wasn't, this early, but I know that this sister wasn't born quite yet. Sorry, I got
Because
cats.
that's a vague time for you.
Well, I may have actually been able to limit it down a little closer because I just found a report roughly about that same time that of someone saying they saw what looked like a craft in the sky being chased by a jet.
Around when?
Around that time frame, it posted. The report is dated July 16th, 2001. Let's see if I can. Actually, I got it saved somewhere here. There was a gentleman who said he was coming out of the library and saw what looked like a craft in the sky, and that some kind of jet was chasing after it. See, no, July 18th, 2000. There it is.
July 18th, 2000.
Yeah.
Interesting. And that was right in your neighborhood or close to you?
That would have been basically to get to Jerome from Murtaugh, you would have to pass through Twin Falls. It's right in that square area, for lack of a better word.
Okay. So noted. I guess after 2008, you were 12 years old. That was when you saw the little girl, and that was a major moment in life.
Mm-hmm.
You want to go forward from there? The next thing you remember happening?
Right as the little girl went to approach me, the blue veil seemed to start lifting, for lack of a better word. I could start making out more figures, but the vision, I guess would be a good term for it, didn't stick around long enough for me to register any details.
Sorry, I'm looking up Idaho. Or Tog. Oh, you're right there by Salt Lake City, like not far. And which direction are you from Murtaugh? Twin Falls, Rome. Sorry, man. I'm just getting acquainted with the area real quick.
No, I understand.
Oh, Jerome, right
Mhm.
there. Right, the Twin Falls, like very close.
You're just right across the Snake River. So yeah, we're not far from
Oh,
the
wow.
Evil Knievel jump site.
Huh. Oh, that's where that was. Okay, so
Yeah.
now I know. Oh, now I get it. Yeah, that's funny. Have a look. A couple other things. Okay, so so moving forward from 2008, I guess what's the next thing?
That little girl would seem to pop up at random. Just seemed like it was a way to give encouragement. December 7th, 2012 was her next major visit. And that was the day my grandfather actually passed away from cancer.
When in 2008?
This would be 2012.
2012. That was the next time she visited you?
That was the next major one.
And that was she visited a couple days before he passed away?
The day of.
What is your nationality?
Like,
Yeah, like
it was
your
like
ethnicity.
little Gaelic, little Native American. Blood test just found out apparently I'm part Incan too, so that I didn't know about that.
When you say Gaelic, you mean like Irish?
Irish, Scottish, a little Polish, a little bit of everything, it seems.
So really, you're in the nestled in between where all the military bases are in Idaho, are very close. Pretty much there's an Air Force, the Army base is right under you, and then Idaho Army National Guard, and what's it called? The
Mountain Home Air Force Base.
Mountain Home Air Force Base isn't too far away.
Yeah, it's about a 2-hour drive from me.
And a lot of the National Guard right there in Jerome is the National Guard recruiter and the National Guard office. So there's a military presence in the area.
Yeah. There's one point I didn't really take too much thought into alleged UFOs because of that, you know?
Where everybody wants to believe that it's just the military, but really the military is working for them. So
yeah,
you know what I mean? They're subcontracting with each other. What the real structure is that everything's a corporation. It's corporate structure. It's the same way that GM and Mazda collaborate on body designs. You go, man, that looks just exactly like the GM. You don't think they're working together, but they are. They're all working together behind the scenes. There's no divide, and the ETs are working with the military in the same way.
Yeah,
the genetic programs seem to be very widespread. Most of the time, it's females that are. Most of the time, what you're telling me of going and being visited by someone that claims allegedly an offspring. So what they tell you, what you're seeing, and what is, who knows, right? If that's what's real or not. Like the truth is, you're a young kid. You're being taken basically against your will, or in a shady manner, and they're being seen things. So, but typically, there's that women are going through that. Like I hear that 100 times to 1 of women versus men being taken and okay. So your grandfather passed away 2012. Was there what was after that? I guess let's roll the clock forward and give me the next thing.
Like I said, there's the next major one would have taken place 2014, October 2014. I had gotten into a car accident. A pickup truck sideswiped me that was going 60 miles an hour, and just before I blacked out, that little girl was there in the passenger seat screaming, "Daddy, look out."
Have you had any precognition or any kind of like throughout your life? Have you had things where you were precognitive of, like where you dreamt it and it came true, or you had a feeling like something was going to happen and then it came true?
That has happened all my life.
Was it worse when you were younger?
In many ways, yes. With a lot of the recent revelations from the last few years, it seems to be picking back up. Honestly, I didn't know until about I was 9 years old that I realized that not everybody could had that happen to them.
You think it's normal, right? You think
Yeah.
it's normal, like, hey, I dreamt today. At first, you tell people, and after a while, you're like, oh yeah, I dreamt this before, and then you just don't think about it. You're like, everybody does it. The fact is, I think everybody does do it somewhat, but most of them don't realize it. Or it could be, honestly, I think it's easy to think that everybody's smart. It's harder to actually realize that everybody's kind of dumb. The older I get, the more I look around and I go, wow, they were dumb all along. I just didn't know it.
Yeah.
I just didn't know.
It's like, yeah. Say, like, just say, as an example, when I was 2 years old, I don't remember this, but my aunt will always tell me that there was this time where I walked up to my stepmother, put my hand on her stomach, and said, "My baby sister's in here."
Before you knew.
They didn't think much of it. The next day, she's feeling sick, goes to the doctor. Naturally, because she's a woman, a pregnancy test gets run. Lo and behold, she's pregnant.
Hang on one second.
Gotcha.
Hang on, Dakota. Sorry, I had somebody at the door. Yeah, this is classic genetic manipulation stuff, for somebody like that. But I think I'm tending to believe that it's more for a military program that's in cahoots with somebody. I mean, it's kind of what I'm hearing. What so 2014, anything after that? Like I'm looking for the bullet points. I don't think that you were abducted and taken into a 20-year program. I think that you've been repeatedly abducted and used for genetic material. And especially when you were younger, that doesn't make sense.
Exactly.
They would splice, they're not taking your sperm at that point.
Yeah.
You're 4 years old. So they're taking your genetic material directly.
Yeah. That was always one thing that freaked me out, because anytime I would look up, kids visiting their parents beforehand, the mother, she may have not known it at the time, was usually already pregnant when those visitations would start. So naturally, that raised a lot of questions. If someone was out there pregnant with my child, they got some explaining to do.
Well, have you had that happen? Have you had the flash? So let me say it like this. I'm gonna try to temper the language, okay? Because we're recording. Have you had a flash? You meet somebody, you fall kind of unreasonably attracted to them, you have intercourse or not, or even just like a brief emotional thing, but have intercourse, and then all of a sudden lose the attraction almost just as quick as you got it. Then they have a scare, thinking they may be pregnant the next month, and then the following month everything checks out. No, I'm not pregnant. My period came back. Have you had any of that happen?
No.
So that's common for one of the breeding programs too. So there are people for males. So for a male that's in the program, what will happen is they'll meet somebody randomly, somebody that is not your type, somebody that is not who you'd normally have a relationship with, and then immediately have an affair, and then like a one night stand, and then hear from them a couple weeks, 3 weeks later saying, I'm late on my period. It's weird because they're going to swear we use protection, but blah, blah, blah. It just letting you know. And then the following month, be like, oh, my period came back. It's all good. And then you never talk again. Everything's amicable. So that's something that I hear from males repeatedly. Like you hear that a lot, and it happens, a dozen times, a half dozen times to them over the course of X amount of years.
Yeah.
So that's like an ongoing breeding program. But the thing is, your area that you're in is known for developing things for the Solar Warden program and the United States Secret Space Program. So it's really like very far away. It might be an hour drive for you, but ultimately that's in your backyard. And then you've got the National Guard there. Your dad was in the National Guard, which means they got his DNA sample on his medical intake into the National Guard. They got his DNA. So I mean, I'm not trying to put you in a box and say this is what happened, but I'm trying to sort it out in a way of what's possible, what the possibilities are. And it would be like you said, the guy with the blue veil, the man that came out with the silver hair and a cloak, like that figure sounds more like somebody that would be an ET working alongside. Do you remember in any of your memories, do you remember any kind of military personnel or military looking people at all?
I would see individuals that did have that kind of carry to them, just in how they would carry themselves. But from what I've read up, they were not from this world.
So did they look human?
Yes.
But they had like a different, if you had to describe them, then I guess if you were going to describe them and be vague and generalize them, would you say they look like Europeans, or they look like Asians, or they look like Americans?
Well, that's where one of the interesting twists comes in. Apparently, I used to work with Thor Han, Elena's contact.
So she told you this?
She's the first one I went to when I found this part out.
Okay. So look, I can already tell kind of where this is heading. The question I would ask you is, and I know we didn't get to all of I've got maybe 7 bullet points here of what you're remembering, fragmented memories, contact experiences. I'm looking at like 7 bullet points. I can pretty much bet the farm that there's at least triple that. Of things that you remember, the individual we call them fragmented memories. So memories that really don't taper off. You don't remember exactly maybe waking up out of bed and walking to the door and then poof, you're somewhere else. Like you don't remember. So you don't remember getting there or getting back, but you have the memory. Is that accurate?
Most of them. There's only one instance where I physically remember being brought back.
Yeah. So in the beginning, a lot of times, well, again, and I hate suggesting things, right? I don't want to I don't want to tell you what you experienced, right? By what I've heard that matches what other people experience. But I would ask you this: out of all of the fragmented memories, which one do you want to remember more of? Is there one memory that kind of stands out where where you know that there's more and you'd like to remember more?
It's honestly hard to single one out, because the more I go into it, it seems like the more it's all interconnected.
Yeah, that's why I would shoot for one that I guess is a big question to you, that has the most emotional value. So whichever one has the biggest spike of emotionality around it is going to be the easiest one to get more memories about. So obviously they take you and they put you back, and your memory, the next day, do you remember, or is it not for weeks later that you get the memories back, or years?
The one where I physically remember being brought back, just as an example, I was brought to what looked like a hospital room out of Star Trek. I remember seeing this woman lying in the bed. She obviously looked out of it. She had a little baby in her arms, and that little girl I mentioned earlier was sitting over her shoulder. That little girl realizes I'm in the room, says, "Daddy, come meet my new baby brother." kid looks just like me. I look out the window, and the view I saw reminded me a lot of images of Mars you would see from the rovers. Then all of a sudden, an alarm goes off, and I feel someone grab me on my shoulder from behind and say, "We need to get you out of here now." Feel like I'm being thrown back. I remember actually flying through the wall, crashing into my bed so hard that the bed went through the wall.
Oh wow. Okay. Hmm. What? How old were you when that happened? Do you think?
This was March 2021.
See, you didn't tell me that when I said 21. So I called that. I said
like,
March. I said
well,
2021. What happened, man?
all right. Well, the whole Kane situation, something about those attacks
Overshadowed that.
not led up to it, actually. Because that little girl started to appear to everybody else that was affected by those attacks. And
That changes pretty much that changes a lot about the scope of that. So, right. So those attacks happened, but this event was also, this is a return event, and you came back to the same day. You were an adult.
Yeah.
At that point.
Mm-hmm.
In the memory, you were an adult as well.
Yeah.
So, and I call it an infirmary. So let's just say, and without labeling it as a definite thing. So you have to keep an open mind that it may not have been Mars. It may not have been even a medical facility, right? So it's what you remember.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll call it the infirmary on Mars. Like that's the bullet point that I would say this, the infirmary on Mars, because that's what we're working with here.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the challenge would be to remember what happened before then. What you were doing there prior to that. Were you getting medical exams? Were you getting something that happened? What I'd like to do is, firstly, I'd love to have you on my show to talk about this stuff. And it's pretty interesting. I'd love to share your story. And you already have been on Elena's show, so you've already been in front of a huge audience and you talked about your own stuff. But what I would suggest is working on an exercise to try to get more memories around that. So what happens is you have the memories that are huge, that have, when you were 12, there was a suicide attempt around there. You were highly depressed. You were suicidal.
Yep.
Right. So obviously on a scale of, on a 1 to 100 scale of emotions, you were very high.
Oh yeah.
Okay. In emotional, and it can be happiness or sad, but it's just the 0 being the baseline, no emotions. The car accident, on a scale of 1 to 100 of emotions, it was so very high instance. Okay. Let's see here. The grandparents, on a scale of emotion, that's a very emotional moment there too. This one, the infirmary on Mars, where were you at emotionally on that, if you had to say?
It honestly, the day before, nothing really stuck out. Like I said, the attacks that took place were Valentine's Day of 2021, and it just continually led up to March. That day in itself just seemed normal. It's just that there was a bit of a break in actually trying to get a photo of the little girl. The woman that had went to go seek mental health help, she did a podcast briefly, and she went to send me this little audio clip of what sounds like a very tired child calling out for mommy. Now, she's out of Ontario, Canada. I'm in Idaho. We never physically met, as far as I'm aware. My first thought, because I wasn't really looking at the ET angle of it yet, was that this had to be some sort of time travel, because that little girl looked and acted too much like me to not have some sort of family relation. So what I did is I found a more kind of forward-facing image of the woman, ran it through one of those AI apps what our kids look like. Added a little bit of baby fat just to try to get around the same age. Then I sent it to her without telling her how I made it initially. She identified it as the little girl that was visiting her right away.
Who's this? Who identified it?
The woman that went to get her
The one that was getting attacked. Okay.
Yeah. Apparently she had previous experience when she was about 14 years old with this thing, so.
Okay. Man, I don't think that you were taken for a long time. Like I said, I still feel from what I'm seeing, it looks like you've been taken multiple times.
Oh yeah.
And however that happened. But the 2000 to 21 date that stands out. Did you have any other? So that was a trip. Let's call that a trip. You were in that infirmary and then you were put back into your bed.
Yeah.
Okay, so there was an A to B trip there. You have other memories of similar trips like that? Or is that a unique time, like a unique thing?
Like you say, it could very well be the fact that there was an emotional attachment to that particular event, why I remember more of it. Because even though I don't physically remember the trip back on certain occasions, there's been times where I realized, wait a sec, that was a little too much to be just a weird dream. I'd run outside and there's a craft flying away from my house.
And when that happened, did you notice, were there any events prior to those happening or afterwards that in your day-to-day life that were unusual?
Right around that time frame, there would be these repeated frequencies that seem to come out of nowhere. And it wasn't just me that heard them. There'd be others. Say, like, I'd just be at my day job at a local grocery store, and all of a sudden a bunch of electronics would start giving out this repeated frequency, and everybody was concerned about what was going on. So their first thought
that was before and after being abducted.
Yeah.
So electronic. Jeez, man. So let me ask you this. So, like I said, if we take a memory that you have, one of these fragmented memories, is there one that you're curious about that you want to remember more? Like, what I'd like to do is give you some exercises to do where you can expand these memories but we want to pick one that's got a high emotional value, and because those are the easiest ones to get back. Like, if they put you back with your memories erased, which is likely, or the method of putting you back erased your memories too, like the shock of it. Their memories are there and you can't access them. So you just have to beat the block, and you have to, if you even want to do something like this, like, I'm just suggesting it's possible. And if you wanted to work on it, I can give you a few things that work, and we can follow this up in a couple weeks and see where you're at.
Well, there was a rather recent one that took place. I was taken to what I what's been told to me was a planet near Sirius B, and it was sort of like a reunion party. One of Elena's theories was that apparently the mother of the children, the one who identified herself as my wife, she had that kind of Asian appearance. And she's also came through on transmissions with Thor Han as well. This is all directly from Elena. There was a remark that one of her parents said that kind of caught me off guard was, "How's your father doing?" And the woman that my wife, she just kind of has this look on her face like, don't, like he's not ready for that yet. And what I'm guessing would have been her mother. So yeah, didn't you say your father was on Earth with you? My understanding was that that particular event, it was meant to be a reunion because it would have been safe for them to meet their youngest grandchild for the first time. Because not too long ago, it would have been about November of last year, a third child popped up, another little girl.
During the abductions.
Yeah.
Three girls or two?
Two girls and a boy.
And your wife, or in your life right now, you're single, not married, no kids, right? I know I asked you that earlier. You said no.
If I have kids, that's news to me.
Okay. I'm just saying in your regular day-to-day life.
Yeah.
Mm. Well, you're not done yet. So I would say that you're going to be taken again.
Oh, I have
Too.
no doubt.
Um, yeah, like I said, so that memory stands out. Is there anything, do you think there's more there to remember in that memory?
I do, just because, like I said, it wasn't necessarily a bad memory,
But it seemed like a profound one.
but something clearly lying under the surface. Something slipped. And
Right.
the fact that I still remember it goes to show that clearly it meant something.
So, okay, so let's go in this route. So rather than me still kind of interrogating you through the list of things, let's go through this route. Let's take this one instance and we're going to work on this. So, and I'm going to call this the reunion. So that's our bullet point, what we're going to call that. So we'll refer to it as the reunion.
Mhm.
What I would like you to do so if you were there, can you describe the setting?
The city I remember seeing kind of had this crystal look to it. It would be like a even fancier Silicon Valley where all the buildings look like they're made out of glass.
Mhm.
It was dark ish, kind of had of a white sunset look in the air to it, like how I'm told 30 Days a Night sometimes looks in Alaska.
Okay. So Okay, that was the setting. So, and then were you in a building? You were inside a building looking out a window, or were you outside looking around?
There was points where I was looking around as I was being taken into a building.
Okay, so there's a lot to work with here.
Mhm.
So what I'd like you to do is create a notebook of this. Get a sketch pad and just jot down all of the notes you can of what you remember easily.
Mhm.
So you can easily remember, like, it seems like you can get a picture of the buildings from moving A to B. You can get a mental picture of what was going on when you were moving. So
Mhm.
there are things that had to happen that you don't remember. So that's what we're looking for. There are things that must have happened that you're not thinking of. So getting on the transport, walking from A to B, standing on either concrete or tile or grass, those little details we want to work on. So that's all we're trying to do is flesh out small details. If you walked in the door, did it have a handle? Did it have a doorknob? Did it open sideways? Did it open this way, or what? You get what I mean? We're
Mhm.
trying to flesh out those details. And here's the exercise for that. First thing in the morning, when you first wake up, so your mind is fully rested, your first hour or so, if they put a block in there, so a lot of the play these programs will put mental blocks in that
Mhm.
you would have had installed back when you were 4. So they take you and they would have installed mental blocks so that when they delete your memory, the block takes place and it's already got a firm foundation, and it happens in your lower cortex, like the hunger, sexuality. That's where the blocks are. So you're beating them. There's a lag between you're thinking about the forbidden subject or the memory and then the block kicking in and you getting sleepy or hungry or distracted or horny or whatever it is.
Mhm.
Okay. So there's a lag there. That's why it's better to do it first thing in the morning. If you wait till at the end of the day, you'll start thinking about these things and get tired. Have you ever had that happen?
Oh yeah.
Where you think about things and all of a sudden even reading a book you can read a book all day about motorcycles, but then you read a book about the abduction and breeding program and you're out. So that's a mental block in there. And like I said, they installed those at a young age.
Yeah, there's been several times where I've been reading up on those kinds of books, and I would always know there's something to them because I could physically feel something trying to turn on in their brain.
Right. Okay. So good. So you're familiar with that phenomenon. So what happens is your best chance is first thing in the morning. So I don't know if you're a coffee drinker, get up in the morning, or if you have, hopefully you don't have to get up and run out the door. You have a few minutes. So
Mhm.
you want to pick days that you give yourself 30 minutes of a time window in the morning. Get a cup of coffee, wake up, and then you're going to go into the memory. So here's the process. So sit down with your cup of coffee, and then I don't know if you meditate or if you have any experience meditating, but the meditation of empty mind. So not meditating on a subject matter, for instance, but meditating on thinking absolutely nothing, completely clearing your mind of all things. And it doesn't last long. It's a very difficult meditation to do for a long time. So it's no thoughts, no words, nothing, only breathing. Breathe in and breathe out. Remind yourself to breathe in and breathe out for as long as you can. And when I say as long as you can, I mean 30 seconds is a long time to not
Mhm.
think anything for most people. You only want to go 15 to 30 seconds or so in that, and you'll start, if you get distracted, then immediately call up the visual memory that we're talking about of either the building, whatever detail we want to ask for today.
Mhm.
So I want to know what kind of shoes you had on, what your pants were, what color you were, what was the floor, was there grass, was there a sidewalk? We want to flesh out these details, and then you want to write them down. So again, it's first thing in the morning. It's as a good period of no thinking, zero, uncoupling from Nothing you do today, no words, just shutting off everything in your mind. And then immediately going into the visual of what memory you have. You have a fragmented memory that exists. And by what we're doing here is the memory's this big, we're trying to push it out. We're trying to get details that push the memory out. And so this is the very important part. You do that until you feel the block beginning. And then you purposely don't think about it the rest of the day. You'll have the urge, so you go, okay, that's enough. And then you get up and you go on with your day. Later on, an hour later or noon or whenever, you're going to go, what was I thinking about that? Like, man, it's almost there in the tip of my. Purposely don't think about it. Like, it's kind of like you're getting the attention of a girl, and as soon as you get her attention, you turn your back on her because you're going to generate more attention. You're doing this with that new memory. Okay. So purposely for the rest of the day, don't think about it. When you start to think about it again, no, I'll get back to it. And then do it again the next morning. You're reserving this for the mornings or every other morning. So the action of pushing into if your memory is like a muscle, it's the action of using the muscle and then letting it rest. And during that time, your subconscious is working beyond on the other side of the block. You have a block on the other side of your block. The subconscious is running and looking up more of that memory. So the next time you go into it, you'll get the breakthrough and just let it come to you. And do that every morning or every other morning for a week. You will remember more. It absolutely will work. So, but I'm saying the action of purposely not thinking about it very strongly, calling it, like working on, like, God, what was I wearing? What were my shoes? I can't remember my shoes. And then going, okay, that's it. As soon as you feel that seesaw action actually strengthens the long-term memory and will stretch those out. So work on that and then write it down. You have your journal and add down to it. So once it's written down, you can forget about it again. Do you see what I'm saying? So your mind, and then you're just now, let's just say we figured out it's the door handle. We figured out what the door handle, we figured out what the shoes look like. Now you're going to figure out what was I doing there? What was I there 5 minutes before? Now, after you get some new details and you feel comfortable with breaking, because right now it's in a cocoon around whatever trauma or whatever compartmentalized in your mind, that memory is buried. So once you can break that shell, now you're going to go do the same exact exercise, but you're going to go for bigger chunks. You see what I'm saying? Like once you break the shell of that memory where you're locked in, you can't remember anything else. Once you remember a few more things, now we're going to say, where was I yesterday? How did I get here? What was I doing before they took me to that building? What was I doing in the other building? And we want to get those memories. So it sounds pretty simple, but it does work, man. That will work. All right. For sure. And then let's set up another time. Let's set up a time for you to come on the show. For me, I've got, like, the rest of this month is kind of busy, but like in this, May, June, like June-ish.
All right.
And then if you remember anything, immediately email me. You have my email, and we'll set up another time. But work on that. I swear this will work. If there's memories there, that's how you'll get them. Like that exercise works. I mean, it's just about beating the blocks, and that's why it's important in the morning. But other than that, like I said, I don't conclude that you were in a 20 and back. I don't see it like that. I see several abductions, and it looks like people that are not inherently evil. Like you're not being taken by, you're early on, like you have memories of grays, but it seems like there's a different group at work here. If they're trying to. The other thing is like, I mean, what do you do what do you do normally? What's your 9 to 5?
Retail reset manager.
So you're not in the military?
No, medically they wouldn't let me.
Yeah, but there's something there that's important for that. And then people that are taken do get shunned away from the military. So that's a real thing too. Like I had a very strong what's the word, repulsion to joining the military. I didn't know why, because it made sense. I actually wanted to, and I was like, nah, I can't do that. It was a slide replay. It was a block. There was a block there, because when you join the military and go through the similar training, it'll jog your memory. So they make it to where you don't go in the military. But again, like, I'm not ruling out that you were taken for a long time either. So that is also not off the table yet. This is not conclusive. It would appear that way. It would appear that you were taken and then taken and then taken, rather than being taken and remembering things.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what it, but it's not ruled out. So you may have been. The other thing is you're still very young. You're going to get more memories after the fact. Like the other thing about the blocks is that they wear off over time. 10 or 12 years later, after an incident and you have a block there, it does get weaker over time. So you may be 30 or 40 years old and get a bunch of stuff come back to you at that point, just organically too. So I still think you're an active asset for whatever, depending on whatever program you're in. I don't think you're category 2. I think you're category 1 and 3. For me, I break everything into 3 categories. First category is human programs. So you have the military in your backyard, and you had your dad in the National Guard that is also in your backyard, and craft flying back and forth next to Salt Lake, where is probably a spaceship yard.
Mm-hmm.
So category 1, that would suggest category 1 contact. Category 2 contact is the Orion group, which is very negative. Most people go into that group. Most people in category 2 are tortured and have vivid memories of being tortured sexually and physically. So I don't hear a lot of that. The grays are in that group. So, but there are many different forms of grays. Elena would probably help you with that, ask you more about their faces. Category 3 is everybody else. So these are random species that come through here and make deals for whatever they want and then leave. So they're the pass-throughs, the flybys. So that's category 3, and it's very, very varied. So I think you're a combination of category 1 and category 3. Like, they knew about your DNA, they took you and bred you and then traded it, or made a deal with category 3 for whatever outcome. And I mean, that's what it looks like in the first hour. The 1 hour of talking. So that's the way I'm leaning. I don't see Orion group right now. But who knows? The idea is to take the things that you remember, take the vivid memories and expand them, because what that also does is it strengthens that muscle of memory, of breaking the thing. It like writing my book in the beginning, I couldn't do it. And then I started doing I figured out this exercise on how to get more memories, and it got stronger over time, and I could actually do it. So talking about it is the other thing.
Well, that certainly helps, because I've been trying to write a book that puts out a timeline of what I physically remember. And would these sort of blocks be able to, these exercises help with memories that weren't necessarily from this lifetime?
Yes, absolutely. Right. If you have a glimpse of the memory, so all this exercise does is take a memory that's not capped off. So a memory is a free flowing. So yesterday, when you left the house, if you left the house yesterday, if you try, you can remember the whole thing. It's a free flowing memory. It's from start to finish. You left the house, you drove, you took a left, and you went up to the store and you gas it. And then I stopped and got a pack of bubble gum, and then I made it home. Got out of the car and I walked in my front door. If you choose to, you can remember all those things. These memories are fragmented, so you can't cap them off. Do you see what I mean? So what we're doing is trying to undo that. So we're just trying to break those out and then write them down very quickly too. But yeah, if there's a block on each end of the memory, that's what we're after. And you're after anything that's vivid, any of the memories that's vivid, you can use the same exercise to expand it. Like I said, if one is just a brick wall, you can do another different memory the next day. There's no staying on this one this week until I get something. So shoot for the vivid memories and then expand them.
All right.
But yeah, past life ones are the same thing. It's just not, it's capped off. It's the same area of the mind, whatever it is. And I think that, well, I would definitely say that as you get older, more will come. More of the distant memories are going to come organically when you get into your late 30s and 40s. I would expect that to be a time of a wealth of memories of the phenomenon, what you're experiencing. I would expect that, even past life. Oh, the other thing about the book was, what I did is I couldn't fucking write it down. I couldn't. I had to make I was working a 9 to 5, and I had an hour drive to work, and I would record in my truck 10-minute audios and
Mm.
send them to a girl who volunteered to help me, and she transcribed the audios into a PDF, and that's how. And then we sent that to somebody else, and then we did questions and answers. So I sent that to another girl who would ask me questions. This doesn't make sense. What happened here? And I would fill it out. So I could easily talk about it, but I couldn't write it down. I would get mopey and depressed. I'd write one paragraph and be depressed for 2 weeks over it. Like mine was dark though. But making recordings is a good way to get around that. Just make some recordings, and you can even do a text to speech. There's websites that do it free, where you can just put the recording in there and it'll spit out a really bad grammar, a text document with bad grammar from it. So that might be easier to do too. So definitely a book. If you can get a book made, you can get a linear book made. That's going to solve a lot of your account. It's important.
All right.
But yeah, and then I'm O negative too. So that's a common that's a super common. A positive and AB positive and O negative seem to be like 80% of all the phenomenon, and then everybody else has been randomly. But I think that's it, man. That's all I got for now. I would do that and see what you got. If you get anything new, set up a time with me and we'll fit into this timeline you got here.
All right. Yeah, definitely will do that. This really giving me a lot to think about.
Well, there's a lot here, and like I said, you're still active. So you're in a.
No, there's no doubt. I actually have an eyewitness that can confirm I've been a part of abductions as the abducting party.
Right, they see it happen.
Yeah, there's this gentleman. It was August of last year, if I remember correctly. We were doing a live session, and all of a sudden, he starts keeling over like he's having some sort of appendicitis attack. Some reason I was the only one who was able to connect to him to get him to come out of that whatever mental state was causing that. That following night, I remember seeing him on what looked like an operating table, and I'm just examining him. I noticed like towards his lower intestine, there was like this black goo, for lack of a better word. The next day, I reach out to him. Whatever inclination, I remembered that specific detail. Is like, you may want to go to the hospital and get this checked out. Something's not right. He's like, yeah, I know. When I go in more detail, he's like, dude, are you looking at my medical chart right now? What is this? 2 days later, he goes to the hospital for a hernia.
Wow.
And while he's at the hospital, he swears one of the doctors had my face.
Oh, no kidding. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that was a interesting one.
Interesting. You don't meditate? You don't meditate and do any of that stuff? You don't?
When I first started reaching out to Elena, she recommended me to your class to try to work on it on my own, because it seemed like anytime I try to organize a quantum hypnosis session, something suddenly comes up.
So, right. So you know how that works is that the QHHT or any of the hypnosis sessions are going to happen exactly when your higher self wants it to happen, and never before or never after. Like, you're never wrong at showing up at a hypnosis session. So sometimes it's like, the other thing is, like, if you feel like you're forcing a memory that doesn't feel right, then don't. So some things, you can't re-forget them. So imagine you're thinking about one of these abduction times where you see that girl, and we go into it and you use that exercise and you get a little bit more of the memory, and you're like, I've got something to work with here. And you go get hypnotized and you get the rest of the memories. And then you decide, oh shit, I wish I didn't know that. Right? I wish I didn't know that, because this changes everything about me. you can't re-forget it. There's no hypnosis session that's going to put the memory back in the box. Do you get what I mean? So your higher self is aware of this and will stop it from happening. Like when you're ready for it, it'll happen. But don't force it. You know what I'm saying? Like it's got to feel good. It's got to be a fully organic process. Something that just happens the same way as you learning how to walk or swim. It's got to happen in that way. So I wouldn't sweat that. Like there's no hurry. You know, you're super young. I think you're still got stuff happening. I think you're still gonna, like I said, I would guess around the 35 to 40-year-old mark, right in there. You're gonna start going, oh shit, wow, and you're gonna start getting more memories. You'll get those now doing the exercise, but I think that you'll get a ton more then, and I think you're ongoing. So it's rare. It's rare that I get people that are your age. To be honest, most people that reach out to me are in their 40s and it's all long gone. It's all water under the bridge, you know, by the time we start working out the timeline. So I think there's more here that's happening. And the other one that I would say to work on is the Mars thing. When you look out the window, like that instance of March 21, I would love for you to try to take a poke at that memory and get more around that time. Because that lines up, you know what that does? That's the 20-year mark after the 2001 incident of being gone. You were taken and you were put back at your grandpa's 30 years away, and that's 20 years later is on Mars where you ended up back in your bed. It's exactly 20 years. So all of the time travel tech is locked into 20-year increments. So just so you know. So just so you know,
I didn't even think of that.
You didn't notice, but I jumped right to 2021 because it was 01 when you were 4 to 5 was that same time. It was the 20-year mark.
It was right at the 20-year mark where the walls started breaking.
Yeah. So that's indicative of being taken into one of these programs and dealing with a time travel component. So I would love to have you take a poke at that time and the exercise I just described. Take a poke at when that time and when you were at your grandma's, right before you woke up at grandpa's, you know what I'm saying? Like 30 miles away. Where was that in, is it her mom's? I forget how I wrote it down, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right before you woke up there, or the moment that you woke up there and you were at your grandma and grandpa's, that memory, and go into that memory, imagine it, see it in your mind's eye, and then think, where was I just at? What just happened a minute ago? And then do that same exercise where you stress for it and then purposely ignore it for the rest of the day. Try it again the next day. Like I would love to hear more about that, or the other one where you were in, you know, the infirmary. We call that the infirmary. Like,
yeah.
Those stand out to me. Like that, because the 20-year increment is really what I'm looking for. A lot of the programs, they take people are taken when they're 10 years, whatever. I'm just saying, throwing numbers out. They take when they're 10 years old. And then they get taken again when they're 30. And they don't realize that the people that took them, it's the same day for them. Because the time travel tech, there's a 20-year cycle on frequency of the Earth. That's why the rings of trees are 20 years. The 20 years, so they can only take you when the frequency's back to what it was that day. They take you, and the Earth does its 20-year thing, and they take you again, and they follow up on their experiment. And then they have your adult girl, hey, look at your daughter, right? So it's locked into that stuff. So that's what I mean. So I'm always looking for it in your life, in your real. And another thing is people that are taken and kept for the 20 years have big emotional problems or big emotional changes. At the 20-year mark, they go, you know, it's funny because I quit. I was doing I had substance abuse, and I just quit one day. It was right at that 20-year mark. It's weird. So, or I was in an abusive relationship. I decided to get a divorce, and I left and moved. Like they have life changes at the 20-year mark. So that's what I'm looking for. I didn't hear anything really big there, but you do have two very powerful instances of contact exactly 20 years apart. So that's worth looking more into.
So if the pattern continues, the next big wall break's going to be when I'm about 32.
Maybe, yeah. The little girl visited and your granddad. So yeah, that's what I mean. Like, I don't think you're done, man. I think you're early to my desk, is what it is. So, but I gotta bounce. I gotta fly. Great meeting you, and
yes.
I'd love to have you on Talks with Tony and film an episode. I'll message you. I've got your email. I mean, if you're open to that,
Oh,
we
yeah.
can just talk about things.
Yeah,
'Cause yours is actually a really good story. It's not like you're getting tortured.
Yeah, like I said, and even Elena's helped kind of trace back the past life sort of instances, so it'll definitely be worth exploring more.
The past life one. So, the timeline thing, like if you could go back in there, I guess whenever you access the memory, the other thing that most people don't pay attention to is try to figure out how old you were in the memory.
Mm-hmm.
Were you a teenager? Were you an adult? Were you an old man? If it's a past life, you should remember being older than you are now. Do you get what I mean? You should be able to access the past life memory. And you should be able to remember being an old man. Or are you a kid in there? Or you know what I mean? Like the age that you're in the memory, if you can get in the habit of identifying that, you know, how old do you feel? And make note of that every time you write it down, and then write it down, because otherwise, if you don't, then you have to remember it.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's a painful thing, you know, if you're reaching in and you're pulling out, and then you forget it and it goes back in there, you have to remember it, and it's more work. So if you write it down, you don't have to remember it. It's right there, and then you pick up where you left off. Kind of, it's super important. So,
all right.
Okay, I'm gonna get out of here. Great meeting you, Dakota.
Yeah, likewise.
We'll talk again soon. If anything pops up, email me immediately. Okay,
will do.
So if I can be a witness as it goes on, I'm here to help, and we'll go from there.
All right, I'll definitely take into consideration. Pleasure meeting you. Thank you for everything.